I was 22 when I started dating a guy named Hunter. We met on a dating app and went on 4 dates over the course of a month. First, things seemed fine. Our first date was just a quick coffee, less than an hour, more like a screening to make sure he seemed normal. Our second date was at a nearby bar. We both got a nice buzz, and it was a good time. On our third date, we had dinner. That's when I started to question if I really clicked with him. Something felt slightly off. The date ended with a kiss, the first and only time we ever kissed. I convinced myself that since I let him kiss me, things were okay. A couple of weeks later, we went on our fourth and final date. We went out for drinks again, but this time I wasn't as excited. I was paying more attention to his behavior. Some of his mannerisms were kind of unusual, giving off antisocial and borderline creepy vibes. He started drinking way too much and got really touchy-feely at the bar, trying to kiss me multiple times. I'm not a fan of PDA, especially not at a bar. I politely turned him down and mentioned I was tired, implying we should leave. He paid the check and we left. As we walked to our cars, he stopped me and asked if we could go home together. I said, "Not tonight. I'm tired and have work tomorrow," which was a lie. He kept pushing, saying he'd drag me to work if I was that tired. I found it absurd, and I didn't like the idea of him drunk driving home. At that point, I decided I wouldn't see him again. I went to my car in the parking lot across the street and started driving home slowly. I wasn't drunk, but I was cautious. I was also overly alert, looking around for cops. Maybe that's why I noticed the same car following me after I made 3 turns. At a stoplight, I realized it looked like Hunter's car. I texted him, "Are you following me?" He texted back quickly, saying, "Yeah, I just want to make sure you get home okay." I called him, but he wouldn't pick up. This was so weird and creepy. I pulled over and texted him to stop following me. He stopped in the middle of the street for a second, then drove off. He didn't text back until I got home and was in bed. He said, "I hope I didn't weird you out tonight. Sorry I got so drunk. Next time we should do something low-key, like dinner at my place." I didn't respond. The next morning, he followed up with, "Oh no, is the vibe dead?" I waited a bit to respond. He sent a question mark, so I decided to reply. I said, "Hey, I had a great time getting to know you, but I think our personalities don't click. I want to focus on myself right now. I hope you understand." After that, the angry text started. The worst was, "No, I don't understand. You strung me along for 4 dates to tell me that? How about you pay me back half of everything I bought for you?" There were a few other angry texts with personal information, so I blocked him. I thought that would be the end of it, but I started receiving no-caller ID phone calls nonstop. I ignored them until he finally stopped the next day. When my parents weren't home, I got home from work to find a bouquet of flowers on the stoop with an apology card from Hunter. He somehow knew where I lived. That disturbed me. I sent a final text asking him to never contact me again or I'd file for a restraining order. I kept his number blocked. I thought things would be over, but I couldn't be more wrong. One night I was home alone. My parents' house is big, and I had a loft bedroom. I woke up in the middle of the night to noises from downstairs. I listened closely and heard a door opening. I crawled under the bed and called 911. I texted everyone in my family, asking who was home. I heard noises from another bedroom, then my bedroom door opened. Footsteps came up the stairs, and then silence. I heard drawers opening next to my bed. I held my breath, feeling my heart race. I heard a man's voice say, "God damn it." It sounded like Hunter. I stayed under the bed, praying my phone didn't get any notifications. I heard more rummaging sounds. He sat on the bed for a few minutes before getting up and leaving. I called 911 again and stayed on the line until the police arrived. They did a sweep of the house and found that all the windows were unlocked. One of the windows in the dining room was big enough for someone to crawl through. I gave a statement and got a report number. When my parents got home, we went to the police station and gave as much information as possible, including text screenshots of him admitting he was following me home. They said they'd investigate, but without solid proof, it was tricky. I did get a restraining order against him and was advised to never accuse him of breaking in or contact him again. Thankfully, he didn't, but from that point on, I was always uncomfortable. He would be creeping around outside. Even today, I sometimes fear he might find out where I currently live. If you're enjoying the video, please subscribe the channel for future videos, and like and share with your friends. I was in 6th grade when this all started. It was the week of Halloween, and I stayed after school to help decorate a haunted house for our school's Halloween carnival. I'd stay late with some friends, and we'd get pizza for our efforts. There was another kid, Chris, who would stay late too. We got along well, and he never made me feel uneasy. He was genuinely funny and cool. Fast forward 2 weeks, and I was approached by a group of girls in my grade. They were all excited and grinning, telling me I had a secret admirer who would text me that night. I was curious and excited to find out who it was. Later that night, as I was about to go to sleep, I got a notification on Messenger. It was the only app one used to talk to my parents when I was home alone. The message was from Chris. I had completely forgotten that I added him on Facebook on Halloween. The message read, "Maya, I need to talk to you." I was concerned and quickly replied, "Yeah, what's going on? Everything okay?" To this day, I wish I hadn't replied. The typing bubbles appeared and stayed there for what felt like forever. Finally, he sent a long message confessing his love for me. He said I'd been driving him crazy since Halloween and that he tried to impress me with his soccer skills during recess, but I never noticed him. He ended with, "I want you to notice me. Will you be my girlfriend?" I cringed at every word. I barely knew him, and we had drifted apart a long time ago. I tried to let him down gently, telling him I didn't like him like that and that I wanted to just be friends. He didn't take it well. He kept asking why, and I had to come up with reasons each time until he eventually stopped answering. The next morning was a nightmare. Some of his friends kept telling me that Chris wanted to kiss me, which he had told the entire grade. Taking this as a threat, I decided to tell my teacher. She told me to stay inside during recess and lunch and to run back to the classroom if he got close. I reported him to the principal, who said he would do something right away. That gave me some relief. I lived right across the street from the school, and everyone knew it, including Chris. Later that week, I was walking home from school. I hadn't even been inside my house for more than 2 minutes when I heard someone knocking on my front door. I peeked out the window just in time to see someone ducking behind a parked car across the street. It had to be Chris. He must have been following me. My mom opened the door to find a piece of paper on the floor addressed to me. It said there was a surprise waiting for me under the Cadillac in my driveway, which belonged to my brother. My mom went to check but found nothing. Strangely, after that day, my brother's Cadillac stopped working. I still have no idea what Chris did to the car, but my brother had to sell it. I was constantly harassed by Chris's friends, who told me to give him a chance. There was even a moment when I caught Chris taking a picture of me walking home. The only reason I saw him was because I barely heard the sound of an iPhone camera behind me. Who knows how many photos of me he had on his phone. Every morning, I woke up to a message from him saying something like, "I can't wait to see you at school," or, "I bet you'll look beautiful today." The harassment and stalking were getting worse, and I feared for my safety, especially since he knew where I lived. Finally, I got called into the counselor's office. I felt relieved, expecting her to tell me that Chris was going to get in trouble or that the cops would get involved. Instead, she told me that boys will be boys and that I should feel flattered. She said I should accept it and learn from it. At the time, I believed her, but looking back, it was an insane and disturbing thing to say to a 6th grader who was being sexually harassed and fearing for her safety. That afternoon, I came home and told my mom everything the counselor had said. She was furious. I was called to the principal's office again, this time with my mom. She told the counselor and principal, "What are you waiting for? For something bad to happen to her before you do something?" They stayed silent. My mom ended the meeting by threatening the counselor and telling her to never speak to me again unless she was present. Unfortunately, I don't think the school ever punished Chris. He basically got away with everything, which enrages me to this day. One night during the weekend, my parents were out shopping, and I was about to go to bed after watching a YouTube video on my iPad. I heard something hit my window. I was on the second floor, so this was especially strange. The only thing that ever hit my window were birds. I sat up and listened. It happened again. It sounded like someone had thrown something at the glass. It happened again and again. The thuds were consistent and starting to freak me out. I finally got the courage to get up and see what it was. My heart dropped when I opened the curtain and saw Chris holding a handful of rocks, looking up at my window. He had figured out which window was mine. He was about to throw another rock when he noticed me. I saw him mouthing something, but I didn't stick around to find out what. I went to check if every window and door was locked, and thankfully, everything was secure. When I returned to my room, I received 4 messages from Chris. "Why did you leave? I just want to talk. I'm sorry. All I wanted was a kiss. Please forgive me. You are not who I thought you were. Bye." I blocked him after that. Thankfully, I never had another incident, even though I had to see him throughout my school years, from 6th grade to senior year. The last thing I heard about him was that he was arrested. God only knows for what. The saddest and scariest part of my story is that a counselor told me this kind of behavior was a compliment and a learning experience. I just hope that woman no longer works with children and that I never have to see Chris again. I want to stay as anonymous as possible with this story. It was a very serious occurrence that left me with PTSD. I'm changing all names and locations to protect my identity. I've been a very reclusive person most of my life. It started at a young age. Even in elementary school, my teachers told my parents I had antisocial behavioral problems. I was even included in some special 20-minute classes for speech and behavior. At the time, I didn't understand why I was there while the rest of my class wasn't. Middle school was when the pressures of the social hell at school is really started to set in. Kids started forming their friend groups, and that only carried over into high school and got worse. I never had learning disabilities, but I had social issues. These issues have gotten better as I've grown older, but I still consider myself an awkward, introverted person. However, I've made some close friends, and I'm grateful for that. Now, let's talk about relationships. Being a social recluse comes with having trouble with the ladies. I lost my virginity at 21, which I'd say is a bit late. At 23, I moved out of my parents' place. I had been working a high-paying job in my field for a couple of years and bought a townhouse in my hometown. It was pretty affordable but a nice and big place. I don't live there anymore, but it was the kind of place that would impress girls. At 23, I was swiping on Tinder and matched with a pretty decent-looking girl. I'll call her Emily. We went on a date at a nearby restaurant for dinner. I was a little in my head, thinking she was judging me or that I was acting awkward. By the end of it, I felt like she'd never want to see me again. But when I got home, she told me she really liked me and had fun. I was ecstatic. We went on a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th date and things felt great. After getting out of my head, we became boyfriend and girlfriend fairly quickly. But the honeymoon phase didn't last forever. When you first start seeing someone, you get excited anytime they text or call you. You crave the attention because ideally, it's a two-way thing. But slowly, I started feeling like she was texting me a bit too much, at all times of the day. She'd ask where I was, if I was doing something, or if I took my time responding. She'd call me or send question marks to follow up. One day, when we were on the couch, she demanded we share our locations with each other. I wasn't thrilled about this, even though I had nothing to hide. I did it anyway. A couple of months into the relationship, with our locations shared, things went really sour. She started asking why I was at Phil's house and why I wasn't answering her texts. It got so bad that one night, when I was with Phil and my friend Mark in Phil's basement, she actually showed up at his house. Phil's mom walked Emily downstairs, and she didn't even hide the fact that she was pissed at me. She immediately started yelling at me for hanging out at Phil's house instead of answering her texts about going to a winery the next day. I asked her if we could discuss it later, but she insisted I leave with her. I apologized to my friends and went outside with her. We had an argument in the street. She wanted to come home with me, but I told her no. We both drove separately. When I got home, I sent her a long text telling her we needed a break and that I needed space. I know text message breakups aren't fair, but I was scared of what her reaction would be in person. Of course, she started calling me over and over, blowing up my phone with texts. When I eventually stopped answering, she started pounding on my front door and ringing the doorbell constantly. It got so bad that my neighbor came out and asked her what she was doing. I heard Emily screaming at him that I was a piece of crap, and my neighbor calmly told her to go home. She did leave, but I was kind of disturbed. The next day, I remembered to stop sharing my location with her. She angrily blew me up for doing that. I was more and more sure of my decision to cut ties with her. My final text to her was, "I'm sorry, Emily. I have to block you for a while. You're scaring me." She surprisingly didn't come knocking, but I noticed she instantly stopped sharing her location as well. It was exactly 1 week later when I went over to Phil's house again and chilled with the guys. I left around 11 p.m. and got home shortly after. I wasn't tired and was hungry, so I threw some food in the microwave and sat on the couch to watch a movie. I was browsing all the streaming apps for something good, wanting a scary movie, when the microwave beeped and everything went silent. I suddenly heard a click or thud from the dining room. The layout of the downstairs of the townhouse looped around in a circle. Kitchen, dining room, living room, and den. The dining room had a door, not an opening. I grabbed the TV remote and muted the TV. It was then that I surely heard the door separating the den and the dining room clicking open. I peered into the dining room and blurted out, "Who's in here?" Of course, there was no response. I entered the dining room, my blood running cold, and saw that the door was open. I have a thing for keeping doors in my home shut, and that door was no exception. I went to the kitchen and grabbed the biggest knife from the knife block. I also called 911 right away. I had never called 911 once in my life. This was a first. On the phone, I spoke really loud so that whoever was in there would hear that I was on the phone with the police. I said, "I think my crazy ex-girlfriend has broken into my house. Please send someone." The rest of the call was explaining what was going on and why I thought it was my ex. She instructed me to wait outside if possible, so I went outside and waited not far from the front door. Surprisingly quickly, a police car rolled up. I once again briefly explained what I thought was going on and led the officer into my home. We both performed the most thorough search of the place together. I'm telling you, no one was in there. We checked the mini crawl space hidden in the closet, every closet, under the beds, under the couches, even the mini attic. When the coast was clear, he told me to call again if I heard anything, which said to me that he believed me and knew I wasn't making it up or going crazy. My night was obviously disturbed after that. No way was I going to sit in the living room and watch a movie. I ate my food, which had been sitting in the microwave, and went up to my room and locked the door. I texted all my friends and family about how spooked I was, but given that no one was in there, I had to dismiss it as just one of those creepy moments of something in the house moving by itself. I almost texted Emily but refrained from doing so. I took a melatonin and, from what I remember, quickly drifted off to sleep. However, I'm a light sleeper, and something caused me to wake up. I didn't know what it was, but something in the room felt off. I checked my phone and saw a bunch of texts from a random number. That must have been what woke me up. I quickly realized it was Emily. Without reading the paragraph she sent, she was stating how sorry she was and that she wanted to talk. She was begging me to see her and talk tomorrow in person. The rest of the texts were her saying, "Are you awake?" and "Wake up" over and over. She said "wake up" a total of 8 times over text. Surprisingly, she hadn't tried calling me. I responded, "Why are you awake right now? This is crazy that you're blowing me up at an hour like this. Honestly, if I wasn't sure before, these past few days alone have confirmed that I don't want anything to do with you anymore. Please just leave me alone." Seconds after I pressed send, I heard a scream from inside the closet next to my bed. It was Emily's voice yelling "no," and then the closet door burst open. I didn't have time to think of anything besides jumping out of the bed and getting that bedroom door open and getting out of the room. It wasn't locked anymore. Once out of the room, I pushed the door shut and held it shut as she tried opening it. She didn't just try opening it, though. She started stabbing the door with the knife she was wielding. I saw the knife piercing through the door. In that moment, I decided to scream, "Baby, I love you. Stop." Instead of something like, "You're sick and you need help." When I said I loved her, she stopped and calmed down. I took this moment to call 911 again silently while still holding the door shut. At this moment, we spoke through the door to each other while I had 911 on the line. I came up with some lies on the spot, saying I was going through a rough time but that I loved her and was planning on getting back with her. She said in a frantic voice, "That's all I wanted to hear. Why couldn't you just be honest with me?" She asked me to open the door. I had to stall, though. I told her I was scared and wanted her to drop the knife. Eventually, she agreed and threw it across the room. I heard the clang of the knife ricocheting off the wall and onto the floor. What I did next, I yanked the door open and tackled Emily to the floor. She screamed and fought and went hysterical. I didn't care. I held her down as I yelled my address and everything into the phone, which was still connected to 911. I held her down all the way until the police arrived. To my surprise, the police literally kicked the front door down, and it was so loud it could be heard over Emily struggling all the way upstairs. The police entered the room quickly, and a surprising amount of them actually arrived. Emily was put in cuffs quickly and was hysterically crying. I think the only reason I wasn't crying was because I was in such shock. This was the worst, most scarring night of my life. The nightmare didn't end there, though. There was a long and serious legal process to get Emily convicted. I never wanted my name or any info to be out there on the internet to end up on one of those crime YouTube channels, so I've been careful about leaking too much information. Emily is in prison for some very serious charges. No part of that makes me happy. This was someone I spent a little chunk of my life with, more or less every day, someone I thought I loved, someone who tried to kill me. She was not right in the head, and it still pains me how oblivious I was. Not only because of how infatuated I became at first, but because of my own lack of self-confidence. I was so focused on impressing her that I didn't even pay attention to certain alarming behaviors on her part early on. I know this will stick with me forever, and honestly, even if anonymously, it would feel good to get the story out there finally.